I think being able to sit with reality means, at least at times, being able to sit with boredom. Boredom comes when you think there, quote unquote, should be something happening, and there isn't. When you have a phone and can scroll endlessly, all those dopamine hits can make you feel like something's happening, and in a way it is. At least it's more interesting than just simply riding the bus. A slot machine can do the same thing. You can think, it's the responsibility of reality to be engaging enough for me to pay attention to. Why can it be so difficult to pay attention when there's nothing in particular to engage you? I'll be more specific. Why is it difficult for me to pay attention when nothing about me directly is happening? For example, if I'm meditating, I can hear birds singing. It's not about me. I can hear a car drive past. Not about me. I can see the wall in front of me. I don't think the wall is about me. It's just a wall. It was there for years before I moved to this place. Why, under the conditions of meditating, why is it difficult to engage and pay attention to the simple things that are happening, like my breath? If you do have a meditation practice, you'll know that this almost continuous flow of mind chatter is a lot like scrolling through your phone. Imagination, fantasies, memories, they just seem to happen all the time. In fact, episode 26 of this podcast was called The Endless Scroll of the Human Mind. When I sit and meditate, I find my mind so occupied with thoughts that seem so interesting. I just pursue them willy-nilly, without consideration as they arise. It's taken me some considerable time and patience to see how empty all these thoughts are. Just as empty as any cat video. But still, oh, this thought is so cute. Oh, I'm going to watch this thought for just a little while. Our life is a story about the course of our time here. Life is the story that connects all the moments, all the events. But a story has to make some events much more important than others. Of course, as I mentioned in the previous episode, we need the stories. It's also important to recognize that stories are always and only about our life. They're not the life itself. Our existence, our actual experience of our actual existence is waiting. It's there, but waiting under, as it were, latent, waiting underneath the story we're telling ourselves about our life. It's waiting underneath as we place our attention on our mental constructions. I find most people make a distinction between living and existing. Living is what you want to do. Living is exciting, or at least we want it to be. The story of our living has purpose. Living has meaning. Existence? Existence is just existence. You have to exist in order to live, but then that's it. That's about all the good existence can do for you. If all you had was your existence, that would be boring. It would seem like, quote unquote, nothing is happening. You need a story, you need a life for something to be happening. There's no story to tell with existence. And so, for many people, there's no point in talking about existence as separate from life. A lot of people just simply equate existence with life and leave it at that. The purpose of existence is to have a life. And, well, that's true to some extent, but I'm asserting here that dropping the whole story, encountering the interdependent truth and the simplicity of existence is a worthwhile endeavor. And that's what I want to talk about today. Hello, and welcome to the 10 Crutches podcast. My name is David. I'm glad you're here. Let's imagine a human body and think about what's there. What does a human body do? What is it about a human body that has to do with existence? And what about the body has to do with living? So we're going to need to make a clear distinction between existence and living, but let's do that along the way. The first thing I see looking at a human body is that humans are animals. We often make a distinction between animals and plants, but in a lot of ways there's more similarities. Both animals and plants have some form of respiration, which is a way of exchanging gases with the environment, and also plants and animals both have an inside to their form. Inside the inside, that's where there's some kind of cellular activity, the circulation of sap or blood. It's the distribution of nutrients, and there's also some way to handle the birth and then death of each individual cell. The biggest difference, maybe, is that a plant is stuck in the ground and does its movements over the ground while rooted in place. An animal's detached from the ground, can move itself over the surface, but both plants and animals can be said to take actions. It's perhaps easier to see the actions with animals like beavers building dams or humans building cities. From what I can tell, the non-human plants and animals, in other words, the non-human life forms that we can observe, they all act in such a way as to continue their personal existence and the existence of their species. So the non-human life forms, even the playful animals like a dolphin, no one seems to object to their existence, to their own existence. They don't seem to have a problem with existence itself. They may run into problems that threaten their survival. They may be nervous that they could be eaten at any moment. But animals in general do not ask more from their existence. They don't seem to be seeking a life, feeling like something is lacking. Only humans do that. So now I'm going to look among all the actions a human can take and start to look for where is this difference between existing and living. Some of the actions I take, you can say they simply serve my body. They serve the continued existence of my body. I breathe, I eat, I drink, I shit, I piss. These are my my life actions. These are the actions that are the same as all the actions any animal might take. Survival means we all continue to exist. But besides the actions taken to continue to exist, there are also actions I take to affirm myself as distinct from every other person. Distinct and often better than every other person. I may need to eat to exist, but my eating very expensive food at some chic restaurant, that's to prove how special I am. I may need to wear clothing to protect myself from the elements, but choosing my clothing to look good or to be in fashion, or clothes that feel like they're my kind of clothes, or clothes that go with a certain profession. The action of putting on these clothes is no longer only about existence, but it's about living. The clothes have become part of the story I tell myself about my life. Whatever uniqueness I may hope to achieve needs to be seen for what it is. There's some truth to it, for sure. We each have a unique set of fingerprints, blah, blah, blah. But there's no way we can be as unique, meaning superior, to all the other people trying to be unique. There are so many people trying to be unique. I mean, that's the joke, right? All the people are the same in their trying to be unique. But in terms of being superior, none of us are making it. That's because none of us are actually superior. Let's go back and look again at this human animal body. Let's focus on the head. There are two holes called the nose, or 2 holes in the nose. That's where air enters and leaves. There's a larger hole called the mouth. That's for food and water to enter. The mouth is the beginning of a long tube that ends with the unused food being excreted through another hole, this one in the tushy. Excess water can also be excreted. That's a different hole. And the water leaves along with metabolic wastes. So we have a way to get water and nutrients into the human body like any other animal and get the wastes out. All humans share this basic setup with all animals. It's easy to imagine if you can have a lot of money, you might want to have special foods flown in, hire a cook to prepare delicious meals from the best ingredients. But that's going to all be the story of your life, a way for you to be an individual, separate and above. And while your actions also will serve your existence, they're mostly taken to serve your life. As I mentioned before, we all have circulatory systems. So our circulating fluid, the blood, carries nutrition and gases that have entered from our holes, carries them via the arteries and takes away waste from all the places in the body via the veins. This circulatory system serves the muscles and bones and joints and nerves. And all these things form a movable framework, a movable skeleton. The whole system is coordinated by a brain, also served by the circulation. The whole thing, taken from this point of view, everything converges on moving. The whole body is about action. Everything is about making the muscles move the bones so the whole skeleton can move and do things. And we can mention the sexual parts here that are doing their job of reproducing the species. But what purpose do all these actions serve? What does serving existence serve? So it turns out most of the actions we humans take simply serve our own existence, just like all the other animals. If I try to live on a, quote, higher level by existing with finer foods, better clothing, a bigger yacht, as far as I know, yachts are not needed for survival. All of the uniqueness striving is me trying to take the materials of existence which I share with all other beings. I'm turning them into things that mark the specialness of me. It's possible to look past the story of a particular life, possibly yours. It's possible to look at the actual existence underneath, to look and ask, what is a human's actual place in the universe? You have the immensity of the universe. You have the tininess of the particles. You have the mostly empty space composing the body and everything around it. So the first thing to see, to me, is that your true place in the universe must be alongside all of the other people in the same predicament as you. There's no way to come out totally better or totally worse than others without a story. And that story must ignore or deny all the similarities you have with everyone else. The facts of your existence will never completely support you in a story that ends with you being better than everyone else. Whatever you might say about your true place in this vast universe, it can only be pretty much the same as everyone else's true place. This kind of simple truth of existence is often rejected by people in favor of life, in favor of the story, especially when it comes to stories about religion and how God has chosen your group to be the more special one than the others. When existence is seen only to serve some story of life, when existence is used to serve the cause of becoming more important, becoming more special, becoming more unique, This means existence itself is kind of skipped over. For many people, this sameness with everyone else aspect is rejected. People often find their sameness with everyone else depressing. Personally, I find it a relief. Our sameness is an inspiration for me. When you reject sameness, your sameness really with all of existence, when you skip over existence and think only about the story of your life, well then if you have to perform an action that's common to everyone, it feels like you're being demeaned, demoted. You don't want to have to perform the actions that are about existing, like gathering food, cooking, cleaning. If you do that, it feels like you're only existing. It's much better to be a billionaire and hire a staff to do these menial tasks for you. Part of the word exist comes from the Latin root word sistere, which means to stand. The ex means to be outside of, so to exist is to existere, to stand outside of. To exist is always dualistic. It's perhaps the first dualism that we encounter over and over, moment by moment, as our consciousness is created and recreated. One part of the exist is positive. One part of the duality is positive. That's the sistere, the standing. We positively stand, but our positive sistere also has a negative aspect. There's a polarity with the positive through the X, through being outside. So as we exist, we are simultaneously standing in and as the universe, and at the same time, outside of it. What happens, I think, is this negative part, this outside of, perhaps call it emptiness if you can't think of a better word. Without proper thinking about it, it remains invisible. I mean, it's always going to be invisible, but it remains unaccounted for. It kind of leaves an invisible hole, an invisible emptiness that needs to be filled. This is why many, many people feel there's something that needs to be filled. Something is missing from our lives. But it cannot ever be filled. Now that doesn't stop people from trying, and it shouldn't stop people from trying. But the thinking about it is what leads you to understand that because you exist, you can't fill up the negative part. It's not there to be filled. It's there to make your positive part possible. It exists together as a duality. But since people dedicate themselves to trying to fill this emptiness, to fill the empty space, the only way to try to fill it is by imagining that you're filling it. There's no way to really fill it in your actual existence because your existence already needs that emptiness. What happens is that our human imagination, which is combined with, which grows out of our tremendous power to represent things, our imagination starts to think of all the many ways we can fill in this missing something of our life. So in effect, we start to worship idols. Worshipping idols. Idols are things that, in the end, they're just ordinary things. But idols get imbued with a specialness. And then we forget it was us that made it special. Our need to make things special imbued the idol with specialness, so we can find ourselves bowing down before a wooden carving of some god, or perhaps worshiping money, or worshiping fame, or even worshiping the idea of finding a new lover, or trying desperately to find a good apartment or something. We think something's going to do it for us, finally do it for us. And please, don't misunderstand. Sometimes we really do actually need to find a new apartment or take care of some situation that's harming us. But using the situations to fill in the emptiness, that's That's when you get the idols. That's when you start to worship things you think can bring you relief from the tension that's created by existing, by existering. Facing an idol means facing the things that we gave our power to, thinking they'd fill in the emptiness. Letting go of that power that we have imbued in the idol begins with recognizing that we can't let go of such things directly. The power was given over by too deep a part of us to just decide in our minds, oh, I'm going to let it go. Anything we try to do directly to disempower an idol is simply transferring the false solution to a new idol, because now I'll have an idol of, this is how special I'm going to be after I disempower my idols. We can only recognize our idols as we can, knowing that the emptiness we seek to fill remains behind us, so to speak. It's out of our sight. The emptiness, you have to remember, it can't ever be visible to us directly. There's nothing to see but what exists in front of us. But as long as we're looking at the pictures we've made, as long as we keep believing with certainty in the stories we tell ourselves about how things are, we're going to keep trying to pursue these false solutions. There's no way, once again, to directly stop pursuing. When we try to stop ourselves, we're only working with what we can do on the surface. The pursuit still continues in the deepest levels of our consciousness. By living a life and having a story about our life, we've been trying to make the pictures in our heads shape the world, or trying to make the world shape itself according to our pictures and our stories. While our belief is 100% in our stories, it's hard to simply exist in the world, to simply shape and be shaped by the world according to actual circumstances. So to review, we all emanate from the same universal Tao. You could call it the hokey pokey, whatever you want to call it. We cannot, as individuals, easily experience our connection with all that is. We are both fully, integrally the universe and also outside of it, observing it. The emptiness of this outsideness makes us compensate with stories about how special we are and compels us to chase this or that objective. We don't live within the relative reality of our sameness with other people and with the universe. We either search for an absolute solution, or maybe we just ignore the whole conflict altogether. Since we can't find the invisible connection, no matter where within reality we look, we feel like we have to make it ourselves. We imagine what will be good or true or the best. We are trying to make our illusions fill the emptiness, to make our imaginations be the totality of the original universal consciousness that we emanate from. So our starting point is to be ignorant. We are ignoring of, not aware of, how well the X and the sistere of our existence work together. When we don't get it, and I count myself among the people that really don't get it, it makes things seem like we're composed of either a zero or infinity. That's what the choice is. By not getting what the X truly is, we make it seem like a zero. We think it's a zero, and not getting it what the sistere really means, that makes it seem like it's everything, it's infinity. And so it seems, from our point of view of not getting it, from the ignorance that we start with, it seems like it's possible to discover that we're a zero. So we strive strive to be anything but the zero. We don't want to be the zero. We're afraid to be a zero. So we strive to be infinity. We think that's the only choice. In a way, our deepest fear is that being either zero or infinity is all that there is for us. Our deepest fear might be that we're going to find out someday we're zero. Our impending death, our tininess, our short lifespans. We're afraid all of this may be evidence we're zero. And from this limited point of view, our death means we will lose infinity. So we use our stories and our imaginations to try to reach infinity. We believe ourselves to be creatures that can imagine infinity and pursue it, and thus escape the disaster of being zero. I say we imagine infinity because there's no end to our cravings. We can just crave forever and ever and get everything we want. Next day, you're just going to be wanting more. We treat our cravings manifest as this infinity because there's no end to them. The truth is that the only way to accept the infinite value of our existence is when our infinite value is exactly the same as everyone else's infinite value. How can you have more infinite value than someone else? If you can find a way to live from this infinite value, because you can genuinely see it and accept it and hold it, then your personal death, it does become like a zero, but it's being taken away from infinity. And that's kind of like saying that death is not all that big a deal. So let's imagine someone, like me, for example, making the mistake of chasing infinity, the mistake of believing in my illusory story of how important I am as an individual. It's not that seeing through my story will make me unimportant. It's that I've been trying to know my importance by comparison with others. And now I can remind myself, I am not more important than anyone else. However important and unique and wonderful I am, which is considerable, I will say, that's how important and unique and wonderful everyone is. But over and over, I get scared. I feel like I might be a zero. I need to keep figuring out some way to make myself more importanter than someone else. It's almost like a reflex. What this activity does, this trying to find myself more important, what it does is it makes my thoughts become incredibly important to me. My thoughts have to be important to me because that's where I am going to imagine I'm not a zero. My imagination is where I mitigate my distress. And while I am paying so much attention to my thoughts, there is, of course, parts of my mind that I don't pay attention to. And we can call this the unconscious. The kinds of things that get quote unquote thought about in what we usually call the unconscious are certainly worth consideration, but at some other time and place. In this episode, all of that, all of the conscious plus the unconscious, the totality of our consciousness, it's still simply our individual consciousness. What's really worth further investigation here is what we might call the non-conscious aspect of ourselves. Our non-consciousness is what puts us in communion with all the rest of creation. The non-consciousness is what makes us the same as everyone else. What I'm calling the non-conscious is what's maintaining our existence, our hearts beating, our lungs breathing, the blood circulating, all those holes in the body I spoke about earlier, the amazing chemistry of a body maintaining itself. The non-conscious is what makes the sun shine, the plants grow, the clouds and the rain. The non-conscious happens without any conscious intervention on my part. So when you think about it, our very existence doesn't need our consciousness. In fact, that's why we call someone who's still alive but without any mind. We might call them a vegetable, like it's a terrible thing to be. But all of us are vegetables. Here we are, all of us, existing in our way as vegetables. But still, in addition to being a vegetable, we still have our minds. It's an added layer on top of our vegetable existence. But if we're not using our minds to imagine filling an emptiness that cannot be filled, an emptiness that never needed to be filled, well, then how should we use our amazing minds? What if we let go of spinning stories to ourselves about how important we are in this vast universe, spinning stories about how I'm not nothing. What if we stopped spinning all those stories? Maybe there's some other ways to use our minds that make more sense. Maybe we don't need to pay attention to all of our thoughts the way we currently do. I think this is why you find some teachers who say things like, chop wood, carry water. Or maybe they say things like, when you're hungry, eat. When you're tired, lay down to sleep. These teachings point directly to the fundamental existence, to the maintenance of life, as if existence could be enough. Well, maybe it is enough. It's important to remember and keep reminding ourselves there's no way to simply stop what we are doing with our imaginations and turn it around on a dime. We place so much value on life, on our story about how important we are. If we just try to order ourselves to stop and say, starting now, I'm going to value more and more my existence. Well, any process that can shift our attention from our stories about life to our existence can never result from a story about how that's going to happen or about how you intend for it to happen. Any change in this dynamic will only happen from the non-conscious. And if you have an idea of what the non-conscious is, in my opinion, you're fooling yourself. Perhaps with a practice like meditation, or perhaps with instruction from a teacher you find, you can start to practice with your very life, with the very circumstances of your life as they unfold. Our conscious minds are being rebooted each and every moment, over and over. Our conscious minds are kind of like movies, but our little mental movies can't help us directly. All our little mental movies can do is help us navigate the world as they do and as they should. But our little movies can't solve this problem for us, this problem of our existence. All we can do with our direct effort is to see through, with humility, how badly our movies are lying to us about our place in the universe. As I start to see through my stories, which is a slow and gradual process, I imagine my personal unconscious is still focused on my personal struggle, my personal story, my personal drama of trying to avoid being a zero. This deep personal attention outside of my conscious awareness is focused on a simple story of yes or no. Am I a zero in this moment? Yes or no? It's kind of like that game, getting warmer or getting colder. It's not a decidable thing, even though I treat it that way. My deepest attention, focused on this simple question, creates fluctuations in my core existence. My deepest sense of my own well-being has to do with the story of my life and how that story is answering my illusory question at this moment. If something happens giving me hope of not being zero, I feel good. If something happens that I think pushes me closer to zero, I feel bad. what you can start to see is that this foundational fluctuation of feeling good or feeling bad has the same illusory root. Feeling good about your life story or feeling bad about your life story are both variations of the same struggle not to be zero, which is an illusory struggle. Your very existence can't be going well or going badly, only your life. What I can potentially see underneath the illusory fluctuations, underneath my concern with the story of my life, my ups and downs, what I can see is that my existence is just quietly continuing. No matter what the circumstances of my life, my existence just keeps quietly continuing. My existence itself is not going up or down, only my feelings as I interpret events, as I make events into stories. My ups and downs take place against the background of the sameness of existence. I may think it's possible to make a success of my life. I may think it's possible to ruin my life. And in terms of the story, that's true. But in terms of existence, there can be neither success nor failure. Of course, we all have preferences. And of course, we all try to make things happen in some reasonable way. Of course, we all have a story to tell of our lives, and that's so important. I devoted the whole previous episode to that. But you can travel across your preferences. You can travel through your story. You can move through the ups and downs to search for something deeper. You can travel towards the place where the sameness of your preferences lives and find that this leads you directly to your existence, which can only be the same existence as all the rest of the universe. Thank you so much for listening. I'll see you next time. Please visit the home of the 10 Crutches podcast at 10crutches.link. That's 10crutches.link. The book that inspired the podcast, a book I wrote called 10 Crutches for Walking in the Present, is available for free download on the website. While you are there, please take advantage of 2 ways to contact me. You can send me an email, or you can make a voice recording. If you have a great question, I may be able to use it for the podcast. Also on the website, you can visit the archive to hear any published episode and see show notes for any and every show. Thanks so much for listening. And once again, thanks so much for listening. And I won't say it once again. See you next time.